Hello, welcome to my live stream. Tonight I'm going to be doing a live portrait demo, not a live portrait demo of Hank Aaron. This is for Black History Month and commemorate his passing. And so it's also part of an initiative I started called Portraits for Good, raising money to help support young black artists. And that so far we've raised more than $2,000 for that, which I'm happy about. I was being very ambitious and I was saying that I was trying to raise $20,000, but that's not going to happen. But anyway, so I'm going to get into the painting. If you have questions, please feel free to ask me, and I'm trying to put this where I can see your questions as they come up. Let me see. It looks like we've got 2 viewers right now, and one of them might be me. Okay, so I tried to let people know I was doing this, so let's see. So I'm going to start off with this number. What are you? A 3/4 inch flat. Just going to get a little bit of wet, lightly colored paint on here to get this started. And let's make sure that I can read this. Okay. If someone is watching, please let me know that you're there so I can know that I'm not just doing this by myself. And just going to quickly get kind of a gist of where he is, and then I'm going to go back and measure. I'm just trying to get a feel for the placement. His hands are here. So his arm coming across. Now, usually I'm pretty bad at guessing where things are without measuring, so the way I measure, let's get that out of the way, is I am literally measuring right on the computer monitor, and then I can find the spot or the index of that landmark. So his forearm is right coming up right here. So actually the sleeve looks a little lower. I said his forearm, his bicep and upper arm. And his head. You can tell I didn't give him enough cranium there. So one reason why I like to come in kind of light is that when I adjust, then I can come in with a little bit darker, kind of washy strokes, so that I can see a lot better visually before I commit. So this is a photo of Hank Aaron from, I think it's 1958 maybe, when he is on the Milwaukee Braves before they moved to Atlanta. And he was actually on a farm team before that, or a kind of like a minor league team called the Eau Claire Bears, and I might do a painting from a photo of when he was on that team. Okay, so I've got to get some measurements going here because it's not looking very Hank Aaron-ish yet. So his baseball hat's actually coming a bit lower. Okay, got a couple people watching now. Hi, watching from Montreal. That's Gil. I don't even know how to pronounce that. Sorry if I butchered your name. Patrick's here, and Porter. Okay, and it looks like I have 7 viewers. That's good. Um, if I'm going to do this, I kind of want there to be a little bit of an audience or to have questions or something so that I can respond to that as I'm painting. Okay, his eyes are a little bit lower. Okay, I think I can start to commit a little bit. His head is actually a little bit further out here, so his eye is right about there. Yep. Lots of measuring. So I found if I spend a good deal of time measuring, that's going to save me a lot of time in the end. So what I want to do is also find where his chin is. That's kind of important to get the right length of his head. So I'm just using my brush to measure. I'm pinching it off at the length that I want, or the length that it is in the photo. Now, if I can figure out where his ear is, that's going to help. Assuming he has this really nice highlight in his jaw. So, okay, so what's going on there? His head is much narrower than I just made it. So his ear, his jaw, something like that. Like, if I were guessing, it doesn't look right to me. That's why sometimes you have to measure a lot more, because your brain wants to stretch out certain measurements and compress other ones, and it's not till you measure that you can see how far off you are. Sorry, brain. I overruled. And his other eye is slightly over more. So let's see if I got that in the right place. Yep, that looks right. So if that's there, then his nose, you see he's got this really nice shadow running across the top of his nose. Of course, that's the shadow from his baseball hat. So the middle of his nose, well, the middle of his nose is right here. How do I do that? So you got his eye, the center line of the nose, the mouth comes forward. Really great smile. And then his chin. So that's why the ear didn't look like it was in the right place. Let's make sure the height of his eye is right. Uh-oh, something's off. That can't, something. Okay, so I have the eye down here, so I must have measured the other eye wrong. So that can't be right if one eye's down here and the other's up here, right? So let's try that measurement again. Maybe I never measured it. I think that was the problem. Yeah, it's right here. So that would make the base of his nose. The base of his nose is actually in the right place. So let me clean this up a little bit. Now I kind of know where things are. I'm going to mix a little bit of skin tone. So just my naphtha red and the black together. Can go a little bit more with the red. Can you guys see that? So if I compare that to what I'm seeing in the photo, it doesn't look too bad. And I'm going to add a little bit of orange and yellow to lighten it up for here. I don't want to add too much white yet because that will drive it cooler. And you have some nice rich warm tones. It's going to need a little bit of white, not too much white. Okay, I think that's closer to where I want. Yep. Okay, and I know the nose is here, He's got this dark edge to the far edge of his nose. And this is where I want a little more white on the tip of his nose. And something like that color. And then staying dark around it. And I'm working really loosely right now, which means I'm going to lose some of the accuracy of what I just measured, and I'll just have to go back and adjust it if it's not right. Now he has these really beautiful purple and bluish highlights, what we call spectral highlights. It's actually the direct reflection of this, maybe the sky in this case, or the sun. I mean, it really looks like the sky when you see so much blue in it. So I can go even bluer, play with that to push the color in it, so you really see, though it's fairly light. And I think I want to have some of that beautiful purple in there. So let's push this a little bit on the purple side. Okay, which means that I have to go darker near it so that the value structure is right. I'm going to just pop some green in there real quick so that I can get just a feel. Now that's not the perfect color, but it's just helping me see it a little bit better, the color and the value. So again, I'm going to try to work fairly quickly here just to get past that beginning part of the painting. And I can use some of that light bluish color that I mixed up for his highlights to use in the eye. Don't want him to be too bug-eyed there. So if I'm looking at the color behind him, he has the deck. It's a white color of the wall above the deck. So these are just like rows in the stadium. And then I want to get some of his color of his cheek here. I can fine-tune that later. I'm just going to measure again real quick, make sure that I'm getting the center of his nose in the right place. Okay, there's going to be plenty of time to adjust. I just need to get some paint down. It's really hard for me to see until I have a fair amount of the values and the colors in, and then I can really start to compare to the photo. Let's get some white right here on his nose. This is like a straight reflection of the sun there. And then he has some really nice purples in the sort of the shadow area of the face. There's shadow. I mean, it's similar. It's reflecting the sky, but it's dark, definitely darker. And then this shifts over to be more reddish or orange. And he has the light of the sun. This is actually the only true part of his face that's lit, if that makes any sense. But it's an important thing to realize, because his whole face is in shadow except for the sun hitting his upper lip right here. So this needs to be the lightest thing in the painting, as everything else is in shadow. So the lightest part in the shadow is going to be darker than that light hitting his upper lip, which is the light part of his face. That's actually being direct, it's what's being lit by the main light source. Okay, let's see if I can get the white of his eye so we're not, so that he doesn't look so weird. Just using this brush, I'm using the flat part of the brush or the edge of the brush to put in some details. Trying to get an idea of where his eyebrow is. Let's get a measurement. See how wacky I am. So his eyebrow is going to be a little bit higher. Okay, I got too much white in the paint there, so I have to clean it up or create a new pile. So let's get paint off my brush, get a clean paper towel, so that when I wipe my brush on the paper towel, that I have almost no paint left on it. So I can then go back into the black, back into the red, and create that sort of dark, rich skin tone that he has in the shadow part of his face. So that, see, those strokes are a little dry, so I'm adding a touch of the safflower oil to get it wet again. That's a little bit too dark for that area, but I can then always come in with the lighter paint and lighten that up. I can see I need to shift a little bit more orange. So there you can see I'm actually doing mixing right in the painting. I'm adjusting the color by coming in with a color that's closer to where I want it to be. Let's get this little bit of highlight in, and let's, I think I need, this is where I need to measure the eye. That eye is definitely too low, so let's figure it out. Yeah, it's low by about a mile. So I already established that I was making the eyebrow too low. So I'm going to move his eye up. And once I got a little more filled in, then I can really start to see where I have measurements off. And now that I have this placed again, now I'm going to measure again where it is. Still looks a little too low, but I think I'm close enough where I can just start adjusting it. Yep, I can just have to work higher from where I painted. I got to come in below it. So that is closer to the right spot. Let's just knock some of these areas in with lighter paint. Okay. Are you starting to see his face yet? I don't know. Lips. And his chin. Looks like I have this eye a little bit too low too. Okay, let me see if so there's about 11 people here. If you have a question, please ask me. I think Gil answered my question about my pronunciation, so at least I'm doing something well tonight. Just the pronunciation, not the painting. Yeah. I was thinking for a second that I didn't have enough Gamsol. So I have two things that I'm mixing with the paint. Gamsol, which is a thinner, and then I have safflower oil, which is my medium. And I know a lot of people that use Liquin um, or Galkid, which is sort of the Liquin equivalent, but made by Gamblin. And I find that it makes the paint dry too quickly and too tacky, feel too tacky for me. And so I just like using oil, straight oil, for my medium. I used to just paint with Gamsol and no oil, but I've just decided that the oil gives me, it just keeps the paints wetter without, if I add too much thinner, then you're sort of breaking the film of the paint. And this, you can kind of get the paint wetter, but still keeping the paint itself healthy. As long as you don't mix too much oil in it, you don't want to go past adding 25% as sort of a rule of how much to add. Okay, let's see. I still feel like that eye is too low. So I'm getting a measurement. And of course it is too low. So this is, I can start to look at the photo to start to evaluate things. And this is where I will have a little bit better idea of where things are in terms of likeness. Because I do want it to at least have it look like a human being. And then maybe if it looks like Hank Aaron, then even better. And I usually paint life size or close to life size. This is, if I take a measurement of his head, I think it's about 5 inches tall, which would make him about half of life size. Average adult male's head, I'm going to measure it. Okay, in this it's almost 6 inches, so this would make it around a third, 2/3 of life size, which is, it's okay for me. If I go much smaller than that, I find that I really start to struggle, because either I have to paint really loosely and more abstractly in terms of things like the face, or I start painting too tight in it. I spend a lot of time just trying to get something just in the right spot, because I don't really have enough control if I go too small. And I know other painters, they paint with tiny brushes very meticulously, and I'm not really set up to do that. Just because the way I paint is so loose, and I use big brushes and big brush strokes. I'm trying to mix the color of his hat, which is a very light red. So I'm going to try to get pure red and white together. It looks like it needs a touch of the orange. Okay, I think that's the right color. Let's see. That looks about right. I may have to come in with some pure color somewhere to get that. Let's give him a little more cheek here. I am missing his. Outer form of his mouth. Okay. Yeah, so there's some subtler shapes there that I've kind of totally messed up. But I will come back later and refine that. What I'm going to need is some background. So luckily for me, there's this nice black underneath this deck. Let me have to paint out a little more of that hat. So this allows me to adjust a little bit here. Here's the contour of his face, and then I'm getting into some other colors here, but I can stretch that out a little. Okay, and I just need a bit of oil and a little more paint on my brush to get that. Okay. Now I'm just going to come in for a minute with a smaller round, kind of what I call a detail brush, and just sort of nail the whites of those eyes a little bit better. Not going to go pure white quite yet. And I want to keep that sort of triangular shape that I see there in both eyes. Okay, let's try to tighten some of this up a little. So it's just looking all over the place. I'm not really seeing the form or the anatomy yet because the relationships aren't really that solid. But it's not going to take much to clean it up. Place the second nostril that he has right here. And move that shadow over a little bit on his nose. Sorry for all the rattling sound. I have made this little brush holder for my palette. It's on this tray, and every time I bump into it now, it makes that rattly sound. Or maybe it's this that's rattling. What's rattling? Is it my scraper? I don't know. Someday I'll fix that so I'm not driving you guys crazy. Okay, so 12 people here right now. Welcome. I have Realistic Art here that's his YouTube name. Hi from India. How do you choose a light and shadow subject? What are the things to watch out for? Light and shadow subject. Not sure what that means. How to like the portrait even in the ugly phase. Well, I don't think you worry about it. You just realize that you're just starting to put things in, and it doesn't have to look pretty until you try to make it look pretty, I guess. I don't know. I usually don't worry about it until I start to get a little more accuracy and the anatomy in to where I'm painting. Okay, went a little too purple on his lips, but that's okay. He has some purples coming in the lights. But so I've added white to almost everything now, so no longer have those rich darks that I need for my flesh tones and the lips here. Let's get this light that comes over the top of the nose. Okay, so I lied. So his area above his lip here is in light, but also the tip of his nose is also catching the light, and maybe just a little bit of the lower lip. So these are the things that should be the lightest in the painting. And I'm painting them so far, I've painted them that way, that they are lighter than everything else. I want to get this nose so it feels nice and round. Has a little bit darker color here. And need to get the shape around the nostril there. Let's get his eyebrow in the right place. That's very close to being a straight black. And I think I need to move the bottom edge of this eye up a little. Let's measure this one first. Yep. Yep, I still have that eye too low. Let's just obliterate it, even after I painted the white in. I mean, really, the whole eye, I mean, it's not a pain to repaint, because if you think about it, the whole eye is just a little dash of white and then black for his eye. And that's about all you see, except for, you know, the eye details around the eyelids. So I realize what's rattling is that my easel has a spring right back here in the back, and every time I bump it, that spring is like a guitar string kind of making its own noise. Okay, let's get some of that blue purple color in there. Okay, I did raise that eye up. Should I measure it again? Should I just go with it? Definitely that eyebrow is now too low. That's okay. So, I mean, I've been painting for what, a half hour or less? And so, don't have to be in a big rush here. I mean, it is a demo, and I want to keep you guys watching, so I don't want to go too slow. But you know, it still has to have some entertainment value here, or you're not going to watch. So it has to look like I just whip out a big paintbrush and then it all magically appears. Okay, let's get some of his jaw going here, because that's going to help me see the proportion of the face. Let's get a little bit of blue in that shadow, because it's the shadow of his shirt behind him. I mean, it's going to go a little blue and purple. Right here. And there's not that much shadow on his shirt either. The sun is like coming straight down on him. And that shadow in his face is very cool. Cool, what I mean is sort of in a bluish range. This reflected light in his jaw here is kind of a little bit on the reddish side. Something like that. Let's just, for giggles and laughs, let's get his kind of neck painted in. Let's get more of his darker skin tones mixed up here. For his neck, I need to go pretty red. That's too dark. And you know, that painting that I did of Amanda Gorman, I've made her so red. I mean, it looks right, but I know she's not that red. It's just, you know, there was a little bit of color shifting going on in the photo, because I saw other photos of her that were from a similar angle, different photographer, and they weren't quite that red. She was a little more ashen. Okay, let's get some of these lighter colors here. And this is, when I say ashen, it's like skin tones that are a lot grayer, but still leaning red. So that's kind of what I'm painting there. Okay, so lots of different spotty colors going in there, and I need to start to tie these together. So, and I can use a big paintbrush and go in and fill in big areas. I just need this to start to pull together, like it looks like it's one surface. The under jaw is going a little more purple, and this is where we have our shadow. I'm just going to go almost with a straight black here, just to really get it to read, and give him a little bit more jaw back here. I mean, a little more chin. And I really want this highlight on his chin to pop, so I can come in pretty thick with the white to get that sitting right on top of the other paint. Let's get this area around his eye to pull together too. And he has this scar here. Don't know if you noticed. Scar that comes right down his side of his face. And some of that light comes right up his cheek. So I'm going to restate that highlight. It has a lot of blue in it, so I have to be careful not to let it mix so much with the other flesh tones. And that's really, I want that to stand out. And then here lower, it goes more reddish and purple. Right in here. Okay, let's get that, the sclera, or the white of his eye. Let's get that. Usually I don't like painting the whites of the eyes white, but in this photo, that the whites of his eyes are very light, almost white. And I'm having a hard time because there's so much paint sitting there already. It's better, but it looks a little messy. Hopefully I painted that in the right spot though. So that's because I have so much paint down, I'm really committed. And I would have to come back in and remove, just wipe out that whole area to, if I needed to move it. Usually I like to paint fairly thinly until I get really close to the end, and then come in with the thicker paint when I know everything is just where I want it to be. And the thicker paint I'm usually putting in the lighter areas of the face. Okay, there's a little area here that goes much darker, better. That's too much black in it. Let's get the angle right of his eye, his iris, so we can actually get a sense of where he's looking. And the eyelashes come over. And his lower eyelid, I need to go like more level. I'm pulling that up a little. Then the white of his other eye, it's still bringing it up higher. So I'm just trying to clean things up as I go and get them the right relative placement. And the far side of his cheek has goes a little bit darker here. So I will, it's not quite getting the likeness yet, but once I start to make subtle adjustments to things, then it will have a fair amount of confidence about that. So let's like fix his baseball cap. You know, that's one thing that's sort of throwing it off here. Okay, now that's getting some green in the bleachers, which I'm not sure I really want, since it's really purple in the photo. Okay, I'm missing his lower lip. That's not helping the likeness either. Okay, and I want to make sure I get this right, the far side of his lip here. It's coming out a little bit further than I had it. Okay, define that, and then he also, so there's a couple darks in here that I was missing that helps define where that lip is in space. Feeling like this one eye is too close. It's in the right spot. That eye's in the right spot, so just gotta trust that when I have the other things working, that it will feel right. So one thing I don't have right is his ear. You can see that the top of the ear should be pretty close to the lines of the eyes. So the top of his ear is around here. And his earlobe then should be closer to that. That makes a big difference because that means the line of his hat is actually here, and then his brim is coming down a little bit more. Got that color a little dirty, but that's okay. Let's get his hair in here. Okay, I've been ignoring the discussion here, the feed, so let me see if I can catch up. Beautiful colors is realistic art. I think of Rattling as a meditative background music. Oh, I don't know if it's maybe driving some people to leave. Um, how to catch reflected light in shadows. Can we put our own color in case it's not present? Well, yeah, you can invent color. That's always good. Do you think about thick over thin when applying paint at this point? I've been reading about it a lot lately. I don't use much medium myself yet, trying to get the hang of when to best use it. So, if you're not using a lot of medium, then you probably are using a fair amount of paint thinner, like I use Gamsol. Um, some people use turpentine, which I try to get people to stop using because it's so dangerous and unnecessary to use because there's other products out there um, that work just as well, that are safer. Not 100% safe, but a lot less toxic than gum turpentine. And just trying to get carve in a little bit the back of his neck so that feeling, so this starts to feel right. Gave him, it's the late 50s, and I gave him 1970s sideburns, so that's definitely not going to work. Fix that scar there. And I made his ears too long too, so I made him like a little Buddha. Let's see if we can fix that. It's got some nice rich reds in his ear. I think I'm already pretty close to being there, so I need to better define the highlight pattern in his ears, which is mostly what we're seeing is his ears are in shadow but is reflecting light like crazy. Let's see. Okay, let's give him the rest of his head, or his hat I should say, just to get a sense of the proportions of the cranium, etc. There's a lot of purple in the blues of that hat. Let's see if I can get the right color. More purple, please. Okay, there's more black here in this part of it. Something like that, just to get an idea. Okay, now I got to mix up some sky color to fix what I just painted. And that's a lot of white and a little bit of phthalo blue. And even more white apparently. Okay, this is where I start to really look at proportion, because I feel like I'm missing the likeness, and that's usually because the proportions are off. if anything. Once I start to hone in on those, then things really start to pull together. Okay, I'm holding on to this big brush because I don't want to start getting too tight here. I think only where I'm painting like around the eyes, some like really small details, it's okay. Okay, I'm just spending a little bit of time looking. That allows me to see where things aren't really matching up. Pulling that ear a little bit. This is the continuation of the deck. See, I have something really off here where the deck is here coming up and it's way up here on this side, then something's got to be off. So at least this. Okay, so for his shirt is fairly gray in this photo. I'm going to want to add a little bit of blue to it to make the whites feel very clean. Okay, someone quick ask me some questions because I'm getting too quiet. Okay, let me see. Oh, so I didn't really answer the thick and thin that well. So Patrick says, yeah, pretty much just Gamsol right now. Okay, so there's a lot of information out there about the health of a painting, meaning if you want the painting to dry and not crack and not have sort of problems, they call that painting the health of the painting. Then there's this idea of fat over lean, meaning that you want more oil content in the paint that you put on the very top than paint that's below, that may have a lot of thinner mixed into it and kind of washy. You don't want to put a wash generally over the oily part of the painting because that wash or fairly stretched, fairly thin film is going to shrink more than the color below it, and that's going to cause cracking. And so I also think that there's a natural way to have control over the colors and the values in the painting, which is to start out thinner and to work thicker as you go, so that you can get paint to sit right on top of wet layers of underpainting. Because as you see, I'm working alla prima. I'm working wet into wet, and so there's going to be a point where I'm going to need to put down a color where there's already a lot of paint down, and the only way I can get that color not to completely mix with the color below it is to have a very soft brush and come in with fairly thick paint. And so just that whole idea kind of forces you to work thicker and thicker as you paint. So it really serves two purposes. It allows you to have control over the color and values, and it also helps you keep the painting healthy, if that makes sense. And so I've never had a problem with, there's one painting that I had crack many years ago. It's actually a painting that's in my bedroom. It's of my wife sleeping. And the reason why it cracked was that I painted a painting, a portrait of her, and I thought was dry, and I painted that painting, the one I'm talking about, on top of it. And as that painting underneath was drying, the areas that I had come in with lighter washes completely cracked. And so it was not, I think it's a rare example because I usually don't paint over older paintings, so I don't tend to have that problem. But I could see where if you worked thick early in the painting, and then you paint over it with a succession of washes, then you might have some problems with the paint. And I know a lot of people work like they put down an underpainting and then they put glazes over it. And in those cases, you kind of have to wait for the paint to dry completely before you come in and you paint the glazes. And so that's what I think a lot of painters do that work in an indirect method, is they have to wait several days for a painting to dry before, and the paint might have a lot of dryers in it, things that promote drying, so that they don't have to wait forever to continue to work on the painting. Anyway, hope that makes sense. And let me see, that's pretty much Gamsol. So Gil says, I'm trying to better understand warm, shadow, and cold highlights, or vice versa. When to use each and an easy way to identify each. So this is a difficult painting to talk about that, but if you want to think about it this way, is that the light on his nose and his upper lip is kind of mixed. The specular highlights are cool, but the warmth of the sun is warmish, but it's actually looks pretty balanced in terms of being close to white. And then that would make his skin in shadow looks pretty warm, but then you also have the cool sky reflecting into it, so the reflected light in his skin is tending to be warmer, and then getting these hits of cool, and then there's this reflected light in his jaw. I think that's actually reflecting off of his bat or his uniform. Looks kind of orangish, has kind of an orange color in there. And so I think it's hard to break up this painting as just saying cool light and warm shadow. And we already talked about it, that the only thing that's in light here is the tip of his nose and his lip, and his upper lip and a little bit of his lower lip, and the whole rest of it's in shadow. When we get down to the arm, it's a different story. It's all, this whole area is cooler looking with a warm shadow. And that's maybe where we can tell sort of more the temperature of the light. His uniform is not telling us very much. It just looks gray and white. And I think I may have to find other photos of his uniform to understand what the actual color of the uniform is, the base color. Now I painted it pretty blue in here, but it may be too blue for the actual uniform. So let's see if I can get some of the proportions working better here. I think that I don't have his cheek coming out quite far enough, and then having it angled back here. So that's not quite looking right. And then his chin comes down under. I think I just took off, you can see how sensitive this is. I just took off a little bit too much chin, and immediately his chin didn't look strong enough. So it's just finding that the point where it's right. I think this reflected light also I don't have in the right spot, because it has kind of a little bit of a round face. And if I don't get that the jawline right, it won't look right. It won't look like him, essentially. And even his scar, I don't have it quite in the right place, so I'm just going to wipe it out for now. The ear has to move over by a bit. And just going to check the top of the ear to make sure that it's right. So the top's right, but I have to move his ear over. So it's little things like that. If it's not right, it's going to throw the likeness off, because the ear moved over means I'm going to paint the jaw in the wrong place. And I'm going to make his head too wide. And a lot of things, it throws a lot of things off. So correcting those things, if you want to get a likeness, makes a big difference. And even things like the angle of his neck here pulls in quite a bit. How fast the chin is turning makes a difference. So at some point it starts to be the refinement of the forms that matter, and the right proportions, getting the placement of things right. Let me fix this, the white of his eye here again. Pull this up a little bit higher. Okay, I'm looking at this light pattern that's on his cheek, and that's going to help me get the placement of things too. Okay, again, still refining the placements. Gotta cut in the back of his hat. So, missed a couple questions. At what stage should I, wait, so I'm trying to get better understand warm shadow. Yes, okay, answered that one. At what stage should we focus on portrait to have a good expression, transcendental speaking looks? Transcendental speaking looks. Yeah, I think that that's something that I kind of do naturally, so it's hard for me. I kind of go back and forth between having a big brush and keeping it loose and trying to get the gesture right, meaning the feeling of the expression, and then um, working to get the likeness, getting proportions right, and tightening things up, and then loosening them up again. And so I think a key to that, like I said, the gesture is making sure that you are you're working loosely. Sometimes I make the expression of the person's face as I'm painting to kind of feel the expression, but it sometimes takes a lot of refinement to get the expression and to get the likeness. Boy, both of those are hard. Okay, that helps because I can see I have that highlight over too much, like where I painted it was too far over. Okay, I need to add black to my palette. I run out of black. Let's clean this up a little. Sorry for all the rattling, moving around. Great. I'll get his likeness eventually, even if it means me working on it for a while after the demo. Because I think the likeness is kind of important on this one. Whereas if I'm just doing a sketch for myself, then of an unknown model, unknown muse, then whether it looks exactly like that person really is not right as long as the anatomy looks right. Okay, where did I go wrong here? Okay, I got this black because I wanted to fix his cheek. Because I gave him too high a cheekbone. And he has, like I said, kind of a rounder face. So I want to get a little bit of the red on his lower cheek here. It's just kind of a subtlety that makes a difference. And this one kind of and pull his highlight of his ear up. Just slowing down a little bit for these. Trying to get the light and dark pattern in the right place in his ear. So that is important to get that shape right. So really spending a lot of time adjusting for the likeness here. A lot of red in the back of his neck here. He's got his neck muscle here coming down. And this Adam's apple. I'll get to move this over. Okay, starting to feel like things are starting to pull together a little bit better. There's a few things that are off, but there's nothing major that's really that bad. Just did a big paintbrush on my paint stroke on my shirt. So this is officially a painting shirt now. Let's get his teeth. Lots of white. Teeth is kind of a tricky thing. Generally you don't want to paint all the detail teeth. You want to get more of the shape than anything else. And then maybe throw in a few details. Otherwise it really starts to look wrong. You know those paintings where like there's a thick dark line between every tooth. And it just looks so wrong. Okay, trying to mix that color that I see on his lip here. It's like a light purple. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And then there's dark edge, if I can get that accurate enough. It's got a lot of red in it. That looks good. And I'm going to hit that white again that's on his upper lip. I mean the light. So now I can start to see things where I'm close enough to the reference that I can actually see where things are off, and I can correct them much more quickly. That's kind of a good place to be. So that means that I can really start to hone in on expression and likeness, and also pull together the value structure a lot better. And this is where things can kind of accelerate a little bit, fix the placement of the wing of his nostril a little. That helps. Let's get a little, his sideburn coming down a little bit out here. Okay, so realistic art asks, what are specular highlights? Different kind of highlights. So specular highlights is where your main light source is reflecting directly off of the skin, usually in shinier or wetter parts of the skin, and bouncing right back into your eye. So almost like as a mirror. And this usually happens like on the tip of the nose, on the cheek, top of the cheek, the bottom lip, or these are all typical places where you would see specular highlights. On the ear, right here, is where that light is actually hitting directly and reflecting off. So that's one other place where we're actually, and then we have some highlights. They're so light because it's just reflecting the sky right back to us. So in some cases it's the sun, which should be the lightest, brightest ones, and then the sky should be almost like a secondary ones. So where I'm making some of these corrections, I'm using a big brush, and then I can come back and clean it up later with the edge of the brush or a smaller brush. But I still don't want to get too tight on this. Going to pull the bottom of his nose up just a little bit. Got a little bit of his nostril. Okay, kind of messed that up a little bit. You kind of have to take risks when painting with oil paint. I mean, it is pretty forgiving. So you just kind of have to go in and try. If you get it wrong, kind of do it again. It's not the end of the world. Okay, kind of messed that up a little. Working in the dark area of the skin, and then I pulled in a lot of highlight into that, trying to get the shape of his nose right. I'll get it there eventually. I mean, some of it's just working back and forth until you get something to look right. I probably have to come in with a smaller brush for this nostril, but keep on trying with the bigger brush. Okay, let me see. Patrick says, I'm glad you're saying that about the teeth. I know exactly what you mean. Every time I go for too much detail, it's a disaster. Yeah, sometimes I'll put in way too much detail on the teeth, and then it takes a little bit of guts just to come in with a big brush and just, wipe most of it out. Just getting the angle of this cheek is kind of important because it's really what gives his face a certain character. And I gotta get a blue. It's got a blue light right here in the background where these are. I don't actually know what architectural element is going on back here, but kind of feels like windows where the announcers sit. What do they call those, like club seats? Then he's got this beautiful blue that's right here in the photo. Almost feels like the photographer came in and did a little retouching or something. And got just a little reflected light underneath his chin. It's actually light coming off the uniform, probably. Right here. Needs to get a little more orange in it. Yep, just like that. So are you starting to see the likeness a little bit? I think it's starting to come through now that I've adjusted enough things. There is some little bit of proportion problem here somewhere. I think it's his nose, part of it. This nostril needs to be higher. Okay, it's the wrong brush for that though. Where are you, my detail brush? When I need you, there you are. Okay, I've been trying out lots of rosemary brushes and Trekell brushes, and so far I like them both. I have these really nice rounds which are horticulture or botany brushes, something like that. They're part of one of Rosemary's series, and that is really like those brushes for doing that kind of spot detail. Get the right color here for the outline of this light. It's got one tooth you can see just in the space of the lips there. And the top of this lip is pretty dark. It's where you're just getting a hint of a smile. So getting these shapes right is kind of important for the expression. Just a hint. Like he's saying, I am going to just whack this one right out of the park. Although it looks like he's holding the bat for a bunt, so not sure. It's out of the park, but maybe he's just saying, I'm going to get on base and you're not going to stop me. Okay, got a little bit of dark on either side of this highlight. Trying to get that placement right of that's really is quite a workout. Let's pull his mouth over. I have the corner of his mouth out too far. Again, it's just getting the placement right of these things so that the proportions just feel right. They feel like him. Okay, getting kind of quiet again. Sorry about that. It's just, I go into my visual part of my brain and there's no words coming. Let me see. When to know that the likeness and expression has been attained? Well, you kind of know when you stand back and it looks right. Patrick says, I ordered a bunch of Master Choice and Ultimate Bristle brushes from Rosemary. Glad to hear you like them. What shape, type, material do you prefer? So I paint on panel, which is a much, tends to be a much smoother surface than canvas. I mean, if you have a well gessoed and primed Belgian linen, it's going to be a lot smoother than most sort of museum quality Belgian linen is really closer to a panel than the way most modern canvases are. Pretty rough, have a rough surface. And that's just kind of, I guess, over time, that's become the preferred type of surface that's on canvas. I like panels. I like the little bit smoother surface. Don't like all the texture from that sort of interferes with the rendering, and so I like my surface to be a lot more neutral. But that requires softer brushes to have enough control, because if you have all bristle brushes, then it's just going to dig up the paint that's on the panel and move it somewhere else, because there isn't enough tooth to kind of keep it in the same place. So I like Taklon or golden Taklon fibers for the most part. I'm trying out some synthetic mongoose and something called Spectrum, I think it is, in the Treckel brushes. But the synthetic mongoose in both the Treckel and the rosemary, to see how I like that. I think I like the golden Taklon brushes. It's really a kind of like closer to synthetic synthetic sable. But for the Treckel brushes, it didn't quite have enough snap for me. So I'm looking at other brush hairs for the tricale, whereas the rosemary I kind of like the feel of their golden taklon. Has enough snap, but is soft enough. Just sticking with this small brush a little longer so I can get things like the shape of the nose, which is very delicate. It even has this little reflected light on the under part of the nose, so it means it has this darker band coming across here. As long as I get it right. And then it has kind of a purpley orange shadow coming on the underside of it too, which sets off that little reflected light. Let's punch it up a little bit. Got this little curl here that comes down and around inside his nostril. So it's just the shape of the cartilage folding under. And then I'm going to restate that other nostril since I never got it in the right spot. Really having control problems there. Let's get that little highlight again. There we go. And then the far wing of the nostril there is not quite the right shape. And I need to make this cheek a lot darker, and I think that's why it's not quite sitting right. I think that's looking a little better. So you guys still with me here? I'm about an hour and a half in. And really not getting too much into the arms and the uniform for this demo, which I didn't suspect that I would, because that would just take too long. Okay, time to switch to that bigger brush. Fill in this larger area. Said I would move the edge of his lip over. feels better. And then now I can look at getting that scar in closer to the right spot. It really is quite high up there. Okay, wanted to make sort of a darker red there, and I got way too much black in it. But actually, it doesn't look so bad. Just needs to be a little orange or something. Okay, starting to look like somebody. Okay, gotta hit that highlight again here. Get it to read right. And where it starts to go up a little higher on the nose. Okay, what's really going to help me here, now they've been kind of futzing around, is taking the bigger brush and cleaning up simplify some of the shapes. And that's going to do two things. It's going to make the forms easier to understand, and it's going to also make you look like a genius. I always say, some of these painters get a little bit too much credit because it looks like they painted the whole thing in one brush stroke. And all they did was they took a bigger brush at the end and fixed stuff that wasn't right. And then all you see are these big brush strokes that look like they painted the whole thing all in one stroke. So it also makes for a much more lively visual painting, which is, I think, what John Singer Sargent was after, and Velázquez. Then they're making these long continuous strokes, is that they're trying to create something that's a little more visually interesting. And let me see, we have James says, hey AJ, glad to see you streaming. Are you going to be streaming regularly? Also, do you also happen to have Gats on deck? Not sure what that is. Gats on deck, is it reference to Hank Aaron? I'm not sure. Or a baseball reference? Um, cats. I don't know. Maybe you can ask me the question again so I understand what you're asking. Um, the I am doing lots of pieces for Black History Month that I'm streaming live. Um, and I think at some point I'll do more live streams. I have the hard part is that my commission schedule. I thought the beginning of the year tends to be less busy for me, but I've also been promoting my work more and advertising more, and also doing this Black History Month Portraits for Good on top of that because I didn't think I was going to be so busy. And so these are the portraits for Black History Month. And so those allow me to stream live where my commissions, I have to ask permission first, and it's sort of a really depends on the client how they feel about it. Whereas if I just do these kind of pieces like celebrities, then I can do them whenever. I have more paintings then that I can actually stream live without privacy issues. Let's see, his chin has to come out a little bit higher. For some reason, we've gotten this giant housefly that's invaded our house and likes my soft boxes and has been flying into them during this demo and making a lot of noise. It's a little distracting, I have to say. And the thing is huge. It's a horsefly. Okay, got to bring highlight of this nose up a little higher. Okay, the scar actually comes up more here. Let me see. James also asks, it's okay, I used to watch you when you used to stream every Tuesday. Yeah, I did do that for about a year and a half. Do you paint full time now, or do you still have your IT job? Yeah, I still do front end web development for the American Urological Association. Just trying to strike a balance there because I get so much portrait commissions that there's times where I'm making more doing the painting work than I am doing my day job, and so that puts a little bit of tension on me to decide, what I want to be doing, because the day job was paying for my hobby, let's say, of painting, but now it's starting to flip around where my day job is cutting into my side gig, I guess you would say. And I could actually take on more commissions if I wasn't working full time. And so that's sort of puts pressure on my psyche a little bit, because there's a little voice in my head that says, you could quit your job if you wanted. Not quite there yet. Not there yet. trying to get the right angle to his jaw here. It's really important because it's really defines his face here. So I've been adjusting and adjusting that so many times. So this distance here between the corner of his mouth and that highlight is really important. And then having the highlight high enough, keep on starting on it too low. And this is defining where his jawline is. And if I'd say anything, I'm making his jaw too square. And so that's where I'm losing the likeness there. So I just have to bring the corner of it up a little bit more. So I'm spending a lot of time here adjusting small things, going after the likeness here. And it's fine. I'm improving the anatomy and other things at the same time, but it's not something that I would do just sort of on a head study of an unknown person, because I would just make sure that things were generally working and the expression was reading, but I wouldn't worry about likeness so much. But hey, it is Hank Aaron. I want it to look like him. Okay, I'm getting a little crick in my neck. So we're about at almost at the 2-hour mark. This is where I have to decide how long I want to stay on live for. I feel like if there's enough of a likeness here that I may just stop if I feel like there's so much more to do before I'm getting there, that I might stay on a little bit longer. So keep on mixing a lot of red and a lot of black, trying to get his neck right. The shape of his ear is something that's throwing me off. Totally didn't get his philtrum here, which is that groove below the nose. So sometimes I like it, like here, there's a lot of interest in the paint itself, and not like every detail is perfect. But when you kind of squint, it looks right. So I like things like that. If it looks right when you squint, then it's showing a lot of the brush work. And I try to keep some of those things in there. Although, as I said that, I just kind of wiped out what I did. So I wanted to get the edge of this mouth there. Okay, I can see a whole area of the nose that I don't have quite right. This will look so much better as a time lapse because it looks like I knew exactly where I was going. With a time lapse, you kind of miss the fact that so much gets adjusted, because what happens in a half hour just takes like 4 seconds. So it's a little deceiving. It's the kind of thing, those time lapses make you look like a genius too, because it just looks like you nailed it without even trying. Nope. Messed that up. Had the teeth perfect. Then oh, what was that? Oh my God. Glad oil paints are forgiving anyway, because that was just horrible. Okay, got 7 with you still, 7 of you still here with me. I'm gonna paint till 11, and then I am going to, I'm gonna continue to record, but I'm gonna take a break and go off live. So, because I'm just spending so much time on the likeness here, I'm not sure it's that interesting. Or maybe it's what you guys need to see, that I spend so much time on the likeness. But by the time I'm done, it will look exactly like him. Don't know how that's going to happen exactly, but probably from getting up and standing back and looking at it a bit, taking some photos, and comparing it to the photo in Photoshop. That's some tricks I use too, to kind of see where things kind of get off kilter a little. And I want to make sure that I keep the aesthetics pretty high, so I'm going to come back in with some really nice blues and whites here to kind of get that sky reflection back. Okay, so thank you very much for joining me here tonight. I hope you enjoyed it and you learned a lot, and hopefully I'll be back on live again soon. And after I go off live, please leave some comments and some thumbs up, so there's a permanent record, and I know what you thought. Anyway, have a good night, and I will see you all soon again in a new live. So let's see, how do I end the stream? Oh, here it is. Okay, thank you again, and good night.